Have you ever sat down after a long day, quiet, tired, maybe a little heart-heavy, and wondered, when did helping start to feel like hurting? It's not that you regret giving. You've built your life around love, around support, around showing up again and again for the people you care about most. For your children, your siblings, your friends. You've dropped everything for a late-night call, opened your wallet when you probably should have closed it, held back your needs to meet theirs. You've stretched and bent, sometimes to the point of breaking, because helping felt like the right thing to do. But somewhere along the way, the help stopped feeling good. It started to feel expected, unappreciated, draining, like no matter how much you gave, it wasn't enough. And maybe the worst part? It started to feel like no one even noticed you were running on empty. You're not alone if that feels familiar. Many of us were raised to believe that love means sacrifice, that family comes first, that we should always help when we can, and sometimes even when we can't. But what if that idea, so noble, so deeply ingrained, is the very thing that's left you feeling used, invisible, or even resentful? Let me tell you a story about Emily. She's 66, a retired accountant who spent decades carefully saving for retirement. She has 2 children, both grown, both with families of their own. Her youngest son, Caleb, lost his job a couple of years ago, and Emily didn't think twice. She gave him money for rent, then groceries, then school supplies for his kids. At first, it felt like the right thing. Of course she'd help, but 2 years passed. Caleb never got back on his feet. He never really tried. The requests kept coming, the tone more entitled each time. And Emily, she kept saying yes, even when it meant dipping into her emergency savings, even when it meant putting off a vacation she'd been dreaming about for years. And still, no thank you. No accountability, just more taking. One night, she sat at her kitchen table, staring at her empty checkbook. "I don't know who I'm trying to save anymore," she whispered, "because I think I'm losing myself." There's a truth that's hard to say out loud, but maybe you need to hear it. You can love someone and still stop helping them. You can care deeply and still say no, because helping is only helpful when it doesn't cost you your peace, your well-being, or your future. Emily isn't alone. There's also Frank, 70, quiet, kind, always the one everyone leans on. His older sister, now in her early 80s, has always struggled emotionally, financially, in relationships. Frank's been there for every heartbreak, every move, every emergency loan, even when he started needing help himself after a minor stroke. After losing his partner, he never asked for anything. And his sister, she never offered. Still, every time she called, he answered. Every time she cried, he listened. Every time she needed money, he found a way. Not because he had it, but because he believed he should. Until one afternoon, his friend Margaret sat across from him and asked, "When was the last time someone helped you?" Frank didn't know how to answer. That's when it clicked. He wasn't helping anymore, he was enabling. He was keeping someone else from facing their truth, at the cost of his own energy, health, and happiness. And that's the second truth, the one many of us struggle to accept. You're not abandoning someone by letting them stand on their own 2 feet. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is step back. Maybe this is sounding familiar to you too. Maybe you've been giving to someone who never gives back, lending your time, your heart, your money to someone who only sees you when they need something. Maybe it's your adult child, maybe a sibling, maybe even a grandchild who's grown used to your generosity. And maybe it's time to stop. Not because you're unkind, but because you finally understand that love without limits turns into expectation, that kindness without boundaries becomes obligation, and that your energy, your time, your joy is not an endless resource to be withdrawn from at will. This isn't about becoming cold. It's not about closing your heart or turning your back. It's about learning the difference between help and harm, about realizing that every yes you give someone else is a no. You might be whispering to yourself. It's about understanding that you deserve to live your years, not just survive them. That you've earned more than just the role of rescuer. You've earned rest, peace, freedom. I want to say this clearly, because maybe no one ever has. You don't have to keep proving your love through self-sacrifice. You've done enough. You've shown up enough. You are enough. Even if they're family, even if they make you feel guilty, even if you've done it this way for years, you're allowed to stop, to pull back, to take care of yourself without apology, without explanation, because your life matters. And two, there's a moment, often late at night, when the house is quiet and the heart begins to stir. That quiet moment when you ask yourself, what happened to me? Not in a dramatic sense, but in a gentle, aching way. A recognition that somewhere in the years of giving, of showing up, of saying yes, when you wanted to say no, you stopped asking what you needed. You learned to put your comfort last, and somewhere along the way, that started to feel normal. But normal doesn't always mean right. That's the story Hannah told me. She's 69, widowed, strong in that quiet, graceful way that only life experience can build. Her granddaughter, Chloe, is in college now, beautiful, bright, and a bit reckless, living in that in-between stage of freedom and irresponsibility. Chloe often calls Hannah late at night not to talk, but to vent about boys, professors, roommates. Sometimes she's crying, sometimes yelling, sometimes silent. And Hannah always answers, always listens. But it doesn't stop there. Chloe has started asking for money just until my next paycheck. She says, for food, for rent, for a new phone after she broke the last one. And Hannah, heart soft and tired, keeps giving, even when her own groceries grow sparse, even when the phone call feels more like a transaction than a connection. She told me, I don't want her to think I don't care. I don't want to lose her. And maybe you've felt that too, that fear, that if you don't help, you'll lose them, that your value is tied to your usefulness, that the moment you stop giving, the calls will stop too. But what if helping someone survive is actually keeping them from learning how to thrive? What if your love has become a cushion that protects them from the lessons they need to grow? And what if, in trying to hold them close, you've forgotten how to hold yourself? You are not a bank account with a heartbeat. You are not an emotional sponge for someone else's chaos. You are allowed to say, I love you, but I cannot be your emergency exit anymore. That doesn't make you heartless. It makes you wise, because love without boundaries becomes a burden. And burdens, over time, turn into bitterness. Sometimes we think stopping help means cutting someone off completely. But it doesn't have to be a door slammed shut. It can be a gentle pause, a soft recalibration, a quiet change in how you give, when you give, and why. Margaret, remember her. She's the one who used to wash and fold her daughter's laundry every week without ever being asked. Her daughter, Grace, had come to expect it. Drop it off Friday, pick it up Sunday. No thank you. No offer to return the favor. Just routine. And Margaret, out of love and habit, kept doing it, even when her arthritis flared, even when she wanted to spend her weekends gardening, reading, or just being still. Until one morning, as she folded yet another pile of clothes that weren't hers, she whispered, "Why am I the only one who shows up?" That day, she didn't fold the laundry. She left it where it was, poured herself some tea, and sat outside under the tree in her yard. That evening, when Grace arrived and saw the laundry untouched, she raised her eyebrows. "You didn't get around to it." Margaret smiled. "No, I rested." There was a pause, an uncomfortable silence. But then, "Something unexpected," Grace said. "Okay." And for the first time in years, Margaret felt the ground shift. Because sometimes people treat you the way you teach them to. And when you begin to stand, even if your voice trembles, even if your hands still want to serve, they notice. They may not like it at first. They may resist, complain, sulk, or try to make you feel guilty. But that discomfort, that tension, it's not yours to carry. It belongs to the new boundary you've drawn. And that boundary is sacred. When you give out of guilt, it drains you. When you give out of fear, it binds you. But when you give out of choice freely, joyfully, because your heart is full and your cup is overflowing, that's when helping is healthy. Ethan, a kind old soul who used to say yes to every request from his extended family, once told me something I've never forgotten. I realized I was helping everyone else chase their dreams while I was too tired to remember mine. That truth hit me like a wave. How many of us have given so much that we've forgotten what it feels like to want something for ourselves? Not because we're selfish, but because we're still human, still allowed to rest, still allowed to say no, still allowed to want peace over pressure, still allowed to live. This part of your life, these years right now, they matter just as much as any chapter before, and they are not meant to be spent cleaning up everyone else's messes. You have earned the right to sit in your own joy, to protect your time, to say, I've done enough for now. So if someone, family or not, keeps taking without giving, keeps expecting without appreciating, keeps relying on you to make up for their unwillingness to grow, you are allowed to stop, not as punishment, but as a way of returning home to yourself. You are not abandoning anyone. You're simply choosing to stop abandoning you. And if that feels scary, if your hands tremble when you say, no, I can't know this, there is strength in that tremble. There is wisdom in that pause. And there is peace waiting on the other side of the discomfort. There's something remarkable that begins to unfold when you stop overextending yourself for people who've come to expect your help as a guarantee. The shift doesn't always happen right away. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's messy. But beneath it all is something sacred, a slow but certain return to your own center. It often begins with the quietest of decisions, like when Sophie, 73, finally decided she wouldn't be driving her nephew back and forth from his part-time job anymore. For nearly a year, she'd rearranged her schedule, missed book club, skipped doctor's appointments just to be there when he texted, "Can you pick me up?" Not once had he offered gas money. Not once had he asked how she was doing. But still, she kept showing up, until one Thursday afternoon, standing by the curb and watching him scroll on his phone in the passenger seat without even a glance her way. Something inside her whispered, "You're not his taxi. You're his aunt." So she drove him home, calmly, kindly, and when he messaged her the next morning to ask for another ride, she simply replied, "I won't be able to do that anymore." No explanation, no guilt, just truth. At first, he was upset, said she was being difficult, said she was changing. But Sophie didn't argue. She didn't defend. She simply stayed quiet and kept the boundary. And in that silence, a new kind of respect began to take root. It wasn't instant. It wasn't easy. But eventually, he figured out another way to get to work. And he still comes by, not for rides, just to visit. Because Sophie isn't running herself ragged anymore. She's showing up on her terms now. That's what begins to happen when you stop helping out of habit and start living with intention. Your presence becomes more grounded, your voice steadier. You're no longer tethered to the moods or demands of others. You're no longer chasing gratitude from people who've forgotten how to say thank you. And slowly, almost magically, your relationships begin to shift. Not because you yelled, not because you demanded anything, but because you've stopped offering yourself on the altar of their convenience. It's a beautiful thing to witness. Jack, a quiet man who used to say yes to everything, loaning tools, fixing appliances, lending money to family members who never paid him back, told me something one afternoon over coffee. I always thought being generous made me useful, but I was confusing usefulness with being needed. What I really wanted was to feel valued. That difference is everything. Because when you confuse being needed with being loved, you'll spend your life trying to solve everyone else's problems just to feel connected. But connection built on exhaustion isn't love. It's survival. Jack stopped fixing things that weren't his to fix. And instead, he started fixing something he'd long neglected. Himself. He began gardening again, rejoined a walking group, learned how to use the photo scanner his daughter bought him 5 years ago. And one day, he even sat down and told his youngest son, "I'm no longer available for loans, but I'm always available for a walk." His son blinked, then nodded. And from that day on, the dynamic between them changed. Slowly, quietly, but deeply, because when you stop helping people in the ways that diminish you, you invite them into a deeper kind of relationship, one built not on what you give, but on who you are. You are not just a helper. You are a whole, vibrant, wise, and worthy human being. You don't need to earn your seat at the table with service. You already belong. And the moment you begin to believe that, others begin to believe it too. It's not just about what you stop doing. It's about what you start reclaiming. You begin to reclaim time, those quiet hours you used to spend driving, fixing, solving, worrying. You begin to reclaim energy, the kind you used to pour into people who never poured back. And you begin to reclaim your voice, not the one you used to raise to be heard, but the one that speaks with clarity and calm. You start to find joy again, not in pleasing others, but in pleasing your soul. Grace, 75, recently told me that after decades of watching her family take without giving, she finally said no to hosting Christmas. It broke my heart a little, she said, because I love making it special. But I realized I was doing everything while they sat and scrolled their phones. So she rented a small cabin by the lake, brought a thermos of hot cocoa, a blanket, a photo album, and spent the holiday remembering the years that made her heart full, not heavy. When her family realized she wasn't hosting, they were shocked. Some were upset. But a week later, her granddaughter called and said, "Can I come visit next weekend? I miss just being with you." Sometimes you don't need to fight for respect. You just need to stop feeding the patterns that allow disrespect to grow. When you stop helping people who've come to expect it, you give them a gift far greater than convenience. You give them the opportunity to grow, and you give yourself the freedom to breathe. So many of us, especially in our later years, are afraid to disappoint others. But what if, instead, we started disappointing the old version of ourselves? The one who never said no, who lived exhausted, who thought being loved meant being needed all the time. Let that version rest. Let a new one rise, the version of you who knows their value, who protects their peace, who still loves deeply, but now loves themselves too. Because you don't need to be loud to be heard. You only need to stand firmly in your light. If you've stayed with me this far, if you've listened with your heart open, even when the truths were tender or hard, I want to say something simple and sincere. Thank you. Thank you for your courage. Because it takes courage to unlearn the habits of a lifetime. It takes strength to look at the way you've always loved and say, maybe now, I need to love differently. Not less, not colder, just differently, with more balance, with more care for your own soul. You've spent years, maybe even decades, showing up for everyone else. You've carried burdens that weren't yours. You've stepped in, filled the gaps, made peace, kept things afloat. Not because you had to, but because that's who you are. Someone dependable, someone kind, and maybe no one ever told you this before. So let me be the one to say it now. You deserve help, too. You deserve to rest. You deserve to be appreciated without always having to prove your value. And if you've reached a point in your life where some people, family, friends, neighbors have come to expect you to keep giving without giving back, it's okay to stop. Not as revenge, not as rejection, but as a quiet reclaiming of your worth. You are not here to carry everyone else's load at the expense of your own joy. You are not here to be someone else's emotional cushion, financial backup, or eternal safety net. You are here to live, to breathe, to enjoy the life you've worked so hard for. And if that means saying no a little more often, if it means setting boundaries, even with the people you love most, then so be it. Because love without boundaries leads to burnout. And the people who truly love you won't leave when you stop overextending yourself. They'll learn to meet you in the middle. They'll learn to see you not just as a provider, or a fixer, or a giver, but as a person. A whole person with needs, desires, limits, and dreams. That's the beauty of change. It doesn't erase the love you've given. It honors it. By making sure you still have some left for yourself. I want to ask you something. Just between us, has there been someone in your life, maybe even right now, who you keep helping, even though it leaves you feeling drained? Maybe it's a child, a sibling, a neighbor. Maybe it's someone who keeps coming back, not to connect, but to take. Maybe you've tried to justify it, telling yourself they just need time, or I can handle it, or that's just how they are. But deep down, you feel it, the weight. You know what it's like to help out of obligation, to feel taken for granted, to wonder if they even see you anymore as a full person, not just a lifeline. And if that's true for you, I want to invite you gently to consider something. What would it feel like to stop? Not to stop loving, but to stop helping in ways that hurt you. What would it feel like to say, no, I can't do that anymore, and then let the silence be enough? What would it feel like to redirect all that energy you've been pouring into others, back into yourself? I'm not asking you to become someone you're not. I'm asking you to remember who you are underneath all the doing. You are someone with a rich story, with years of wisdom, with dreams that haven't expired just because time has passed. You are someone who deserves to be heard, not just needed. To be loved, not just leaned on. To be free, not just useful. So if this message spoke to you, if it stirred something in your heart, I would love to hear your story. Have you ever had to step back from helping someone who expected too much? Did it change the relationship? Did it change you? What gave you the strength to make that shift? Please feel free to share in the comments. I read everyone, and your story may be the light that helps someone else find their way forward. And if this message made you feel seen, if it gave you permission to choose yourself, I'd be honored if you'd click subscribe, not just to support this channel, but because I believe you deserve to be in a space where your voice is valued, where your years are honored, and where your boundaries are celebrated, not questioned. You've done enough for others. Now it's time to start doing more for you, with love, with grace, and with all the warmth of someone who truly sees you. I thank you. Keep walking your path, keep standing in your light, and never again feel the need to apologize for choosing peace. You've earned it.